So, Chevre, we know very, very well that our minhag here at the shul is to do a Torah study typically on most Shabbos. But once in a blue moon, rabbinic privilege is taken and a chance to offer old school sermon, Devar Torah. So I'm going to offer you my take to Shabbos on this parsha. I want to admit to you, this is not exactly the world's most chock-full parsha in the history of the world, all right? A lot of descriptions of pieces of the, as you read in the Torah portion, how the Mishkan's put together and who's doing what job and what the Kohen was wearing. It's not exactly, we tell every Bar Mitzvah kid that every parsha is great, but I admit it's not exactly full with a lot of narrative. There's not a lot of story. But I want to give a teaching to Shabbat because I feel the need to explain to you something that I imagine most of you, maybe all of you, have no idea what's going on right now because thank God it's a very minor issue, frankly. But it's worthy of an opportunity for bringing forward a conversation that we will not have here in the shul and sanctuary. But if you agree or disagree or have your own opinion, two Jews, three opinions, what I'm about to share, I would be more than happy to hear what you say, but after shul during the Kiddush, all right, or during the week, all right? So here's the subject matter, all right? This week's parsha is called Pikudei, all right? And it's that last one as the cantor just finished on the cantor, and we did Chazak, Chazak, Chazek. It's just wrapping up the building of the Mishkan. It's been described in many parshas before. The very interesting word, Ela Pikudei HaMishkan. Pikudei is a very unique word. If you look here, and I actually go deep into a kind of biblical dictionary for what the word Pikudei means, it has multiple different definitions. Now, in your Eitz Chaim, you look at the translation, it says, these are the appointments of the tabernacle. The appointments. What exactly does that mean? Also says these are the records of the tabernacle. It appears that the intention, and I trust the scholars of our Eitz Chaim, is to kind of say this is the record of what all the parts were. It's like the accounting book, like the inventory, and also something like these are the people who are in charge of the different parts of the Mishkan, and the word Pikudei involves all of that. But when you look in it more deeply, and I know some of us here have spent time in Israel with modern Hebrew, Pikudei or Pikud or Lifakid or has a lot of different kind of meanings that don't directly have to do with that. In Israel, homeland security. Does anyone know how you say homeland security in Israel? It's called Pikud Ha'oref, which you wouldn't even think has anything to do with it, but it means something like home front command, like a command center. So you're saying, what does that have to do? Well, does that have something to do with it? Not exactly. A tafkid, if I have a tafkid, it's a role or a function. Someone in Israel who's like a clerk, like at a bank, who's taking forever is a pakid, okay? If those who know Israeli culture, is a little bit of a joke, a little bit serious, okay? When someone is called to the army you're called up to do your reserve duty, it's called a pikuda. It's like a command, like you have to do it, like almost like select service in America, like you have to come serve, a draft essentially, something like this. So it has all these kind of different meanings. It's a role, it's a function, it's an accounting, it's a record. What does it mean? Well, this one scholar, Edward Horowitz, who wrote a whole book on how the Hebrew language grew, he says, if you take it at 30,000 feet, what does pakir, lifkod mean? It means to pay attention to. To pay attention. So when it says these are the Pikudei Mishkan, pay attention. Who pays attention to the Mishkan? We pay attention to all parts of the Mishkan. Command means to kind of watch the home front, like the security aspects. If you give it all the thread between, means to pay attention to. Okay. So let me leave you with that little piece of Torah in the back. You're thinking, okay, what's that have to do with what the Rabbi is going to talk about today? That seems interesting. Well, get ready, all right? Right now, if you go on a website called change.org, there is a petition. Do people know what change.org is? Change.org is a website anyone can put, essentially for free, a petition of anything they want to do about anything in the world, okay? There's a specific petition right now calling for me to be fired. Now, I'm happy to say I've looked at the names a few times, and there's no one who is currently a member of Beth Meyer Synagogue who has listed their name on this. There are about, 43 names as of before Shabbat of people who've signed it. And from what I can tell, maybe half of them live in the triangle. The other half, I think, are just somehow connected outside of it. So I want to calm everyone down. The president is here. I'm not looking for myself to, I don't consider this to be a deep and profound threat. Although constitutionally, as a Jewish person, I am worried all the time. I'm not exactly worried about this 100%. But what is going on there? Why all of a sudden? And by the way, it's not just after Rabbi Eric. It also mentions Rabbi Jenny. What's going on here? I'm glad to see that you all are as shocked as, believe me, I was when I came across, I have like a Google alert that says when Eric Solomon is mentioned, I said, hey, what the heck's going on over here? Well, let's give a little bit of a backstory, okay? Because I need to use a pikude. I'm paying attention to what's going on there because it seems that there's some people in the triangle who think I'm not paying attention to the right things. They would like me to pay attention to their petition as opposed to paying attention to what I think is most important, or to some degree, what this congregation thinks is what's important. So let me explain. About a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and I know there's been a lot in the news, so you may feel like you've been overwhelmed with news, okay? But about 6 weeks ago, President Trump and some of his advisors made a specific call out about what they think the future of Gaza should be. If you follow it carefully, the kind of line that came out in kind of the newspaper was, the next Riviera in the Middle East could be Gaza. In order to make that happen and rebuild Gaza, we need to transfer Palestinians out of Gaza. He had made some specific, let's say, conversations with Egypt and Jordan, saying we'll move all Palestinians of Gaza into Egypt or move them into Jordan, and this will allow for the rebuilding of Gaza, which will become the Riviera of the Middle East. Now, for a moment, I'm not going to focus on President Trump and the administration and their foreign policy. I'm just going to focus specifically on that specific idea, okay? The Rabbinical Assembly, which is the conservative rabbis internationally, it's called Masorti Judaism. Israeli rabbis, European rabbis, South American rabbis, North American rabbis, and there's a scattering of rabbis in other places too, in Asia, and Australia, things like this. We came out with a united statement across, it's like 1,500 rabbis across the world. Let me just read you what they said here in this statement, all right? This is what all of us said, okay? The Trump administration should be partnering with Prime Minister Netanyahu to create a serious plan to bring all the hostages home, remove Hamas from power, protect security, and establish a partnership with a credible set of leaders who can begin rebuilding Gaza. The proposal to transfer millions of Palestinians to Arab nations and have the U.S. military take over Gaza is a distraction from the pressing needs of Israelis and Palestinians and anathema to Jewish values and international human rights law. Forced resettlement is a devastating part of Jewish history that we should not inflict on others. The Rabbinical Assembly, that's the conservative rabbis movement, okay, stands by its long-standing commitment to peaceful self-determination for all who live as neighbors in the land of Israel, okay? So there, I see people nodding their heads. Some people are just kind of puzzled. Whether you agree or disagree, when 1,500 rabbis across the country in the same movement sign on to a statement like this, that means, relatively speaking for the Jews, there's consensus on the issue, all right? That this is not only not practical and not a good foreign policy initiative, but it's immoral and against the Torah's values, okay? And specifically because we as a people have been forcibly transferred from our lands. God forbid, in the spirit of Passover, would we ever go, Passover means what happened to us we shouldn't do to others. Should we ever do that to any other people? Does this say here that we think we love every single Palestinian, that we love Hamas leadership? God forbid, no. But it simply says in the way we're going to deal with the Palestinians in Gaza, we're not going to forcibly transfer them from their land. That is against the Torah's values. With this statement, there was a group of about 500 rabbis, mainly in America and the United States, who followed up on this in a New York Times ad. I don't know who here reads New York Times regularly or who gets the old school piece of paper, but about a month ago, the New York Times put an ad together, invited rabbis from across the country to sign on, that essentially said the same thing as this, but it was a full-page ad in the New York Times. It actually ended up being paid for by a small group of Jewish philanthropists who paid for the ad. But in the ad, it simply says, no to the Trump plan to remove Gazans from this thing. Well, guess which your favorite rabbis signed on to this ad? First of all, like dozens of rabbis in North Carolina signed this. I mean, nearly every rabbi in North Carolina, of certain denominations signed this, okay? And these two rabbis signed on to this ad. I mean, we're like this little line in the middle of the, 500 rabbis, okay? Because we believe it's important that the United States and general population understand, in a moment like this, we're being done no favors if the way we go about defeating Hamas is done in a way that's immoral against the Torah. Remember, one of the greatest things that we do here, and we've talked about this many times here at Shul, is that we stand by Israel's IDF because we believe, not perfect, it is not intentionally hurting, God forbid, innocent people. It is trying to defend and protect and return hostages as a moral army in a difficult circumstance. Okay, however, we are basing our protection and commitment to Israel based on a set shared of Torah-based Jewish values. If all of a sudden we abrogate those, we put ourselves at enormous, potential to be criticized very legitimately for losing our moral values. We're trying to hold the moral high ground. And in fact, shocker, I see this as an extension of my Zionism. The Israel I believe in and love is the one that holds the moral high ground and stands by those moral places. This would be undercutting that 100%. Even if it's coming from the American administration, still, I don't want Israelis or Americans and again, forget the Jewish community, but non-Jews to think that this is what at least the majority of conservative rabbis believe on this issue. This is the role of a rabbi. So to be clear, a rabbi, in my view, must pay attention to the issues of the world, pay attention to one's community, pay attention to the Torah, and when necessary, pay attention to what's important to say out and cause attention to watch and seen out in the rest of the world. And this is why I and Rabbi Jenny signed on to this message. So what does the petition say? And after Shabbat, when you want to have some fun, you can go Google this petition. It has a long litany of criticisms, particularly of me, and what they believe to be my lack of support of Israel and not sufficiently Zionist enough. I'll just simply say there are many things that are factually incorrect about it, so put that to the side. But focusing on what spurred them to do it, it's this New York Times ad. Essentially, it claims this rabbi from Raleigh is representing a voice that we think is a danger and threat to the Jewish people and to the people of Israel, so to speak. That's the basic idea. So what I come back to you to say here and prepare you and say about this as well is that I promise you that I take very seriously, sacrosanct, my role, and I know Jenny does as well, but I won't speak for her. I'll give her a chance to give her Devar Torah. Take very seriously what it means to represent this community and have the privilege, the true privilege, to serve this congregation and stand in this pulpit. And when I use my voice to speak out into the world, I'm not doing it willy-nilly and all of a sudden saying, hey, today I woke up wanting to sign my name to the New York Times. I'm doing this because I do believe it's in the best interest, and it's the best interest of the Jewish people, it's the best interest of Israel, and when also of the United States to represent these values to the world. And just because someone comes forward and has another Jewish opinion or thinks that they disagree, it doesn't mean that I don't have the right or the responsibility to speak out into the world. But I want you to know that when I do that, I'm constantly doing it from a place of paying attention, not just to the world's issues, but to you. Over 20 years, I've spent a lot of time, some of you are newer than 20 years, but certainly people have been around a long time, paying attention to what you all feel, what you all think, what you all are experiencing, both with Israel, America, and the world. And so my job, though, is to balance paying attention to you with paying attention to the Torah, with paying attention to Jewish history, with paying attention to what I think Jewish values are, to paying attention to what I think is in the cultural moment here that would be important to raise my voice. I'm balancing all that attention paying, and sometimes I'm saying, and I'm going to put my voice forward, even if it might ruffle a couple feathers. But the goal here is not to go and to, simply stick a thing in your heart and twist, or in their heart and twist. The goal here is to try to bring attention to what I think are the best Jewish values possible, because I think this is the best for the Jewish community and even for our synagogue. I want people in North Carolina and Raleigh, when they think of Judaism, to think the highest. When they think of Israel, to think the highest. And I think that particular policy undercuts that. And that's why I sign my name on there. Now, you all, or who on live stream, there may be someone who's, I disagree, let's get into that conversation. I'm more than happy to. But I'm inviting you not to question the integrity of the choice. The choice is not being made willy-nilly. It's not being made without deep thought or connection and commitment to the deepest Torah values. And so when you engage with that conversation, when you read that petition, when you see it, it means that there's some outside group that would like me to pay attention to them. Survey says on that, they're not Beth Meyer members. They're not, in my view, they have the wrong view of what we should be paying attention to. I'm paying attention to what's here and what's in there and what's in here. So as you, this may end up just dying away, or maybe I just gave it more oxygen, who knows? But I wanted it to be ahead. I wanted to get ahead on it with you in case you hear it in conversation. Oh my God, did you see that crazy petition? Did you see that as Meshuggah Rabbi? Not a Meshuggah Rabbi. The rabbi's paying attention. I'm watching it. I'm seeing the situation. And I'm sticking to my values from the beginning. So I want to thank you again for your support and understanding. For those that don't fully love this or don't think it's great that the Rabbi Solomon signed the ad, totally happy to hear about that. But no, I'm paying attention. We are paying attention in the spirit of Pikudei. Ela Pikudei Mishkan. Pay attention to Mishkan. Pay attention to what's going on. We're paying attention to all of it. And from that, we're still going to respond with love and with respect, with honor. Thank you for listening, for honoring that. And Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom Varach.